Welcome. It is Verdict with Ted Cruz, Week in Review. Ben Ferguson with you, and here are the major stories that you may have missed that we talked about this week. First up, new intel on the FBI and how involved they actually were in creating the Russia hoax. We'll explain that to you in just a moment. Also, in a new bombshell report, Harvard University having direct ties to the Chinese Communist Party, and the money they're funneling in is truly incredible. And finally, Democrats go on the record with official votes becoming more anti-Israel than we've ever seen before. It's the Weekend Review, and it starts right now. I want to move to the other topic that we mentioned earlier, and that deals with the FBI right now and new intel that's coming out. And I got to say, a lot of people are going to be shocked by it. I'm not surprised at all by this. And I want to get your take on now what we're learning about the FBI with the Russia hoax and the controversial Trump-Russia actions predicted with alarming accuracy by foreign actors. I mean, you look at this coming out now, and it's just a joke how incredible this whole, I call it a play. It was a movie, it's a script, and everyone was playing with the script that they knew was a lie.
That's right, but I want to take a minute and sort of pull the curtain back for our listeners. So we do this podcast, and we do this podcast sometimes late at night. So it is 12:55 a.m. So, look, Ben is half asleep. To be honest, he's been asleep for 2 hours, and we woke him to do this. So the headline of this story says that it was predicted with alarming specificity.
Yes, that's true.
And I want y'all to know, we recorded this, and this is one of the advantages of doing a podcast. When you record it and screw it up, you can just stop and rewind and do it again. We recorded it, and twice Benjamin was unable to say the word specificity. He tried.
It's a tough one. Specific. I can't say it now, see?
and I will confess I kept making it harder because I kept saying specificity.
Yes, he did. I can say that word, no problem, right? That one's easy.
So finally, after twice crashing and burning on saying specificity, he just said, with alarming accuracy. By the way, the quote is not accuracy, it's specificity. But
I didn't say quote unquote. See, I covered myself there.
You didn't say the word quote, but I just wanted our listeners to know that like the specificity
the
with which
we real at 1 a.m. That is accurate.
It's not 1 a.m. It's 12:57. You got 3 minutes till 1 a.m. All right, so let's cover the but this is the important stuff to understand. Look, these are real human beings. I'm in my D.C. apartment. You're in a hotel room, I think. Is that right?
No, I'm in a house in Pinehurst, North Carolina. So that's where the World Championships is.
But look, that's pretty fancy and chic-y, and you got to be up at like 6:30 is tea time. Is that right?
It's like 6:18 or something absurd.
6:18. All right, Benjamin. Yeah. While you're at tea time, I will be fast asleep.
I believe you. And you'll be dreaming about the alarming specificity, the word I can't say.
You still can't say it. Come on. Specificity. Just say it once.
Specificity. There we go.
There we go. Look at that. By the way, you know what I did Monday on the flight to D.C.?
Wait, say that again?
Do you know what I did Monday on the flight to D.C.?
What did you do?
I watched Happy Gilmore 2. Have you seen that?
It's so good. It is so good. I love
awesome.
when they don't screw up a sequel like Top Gun Maverick. They killed it, right? Happy Gilmore, it's phenomenal.
Happy Gilmore 2 may be better than Happy Gilmore. Yeah.
I agree.
Really good.
And by the way, did you see it coming? Because I did not. Hold on, spoiler alert. If you haven't watched it yet, turn it down for 5 seconds. When he killed his wife with a golf ball, I did not see that coming. Did you?
I did not see that coming either. I will say, by the way, as a complete aside, I've gotten to know Adam Sandler's producer. You know, he's a big hoops player. I got to tell you, I'm told that Sandler, I've invited him to come play hoops with me, and he said yes. So, hadn't happened yet, but I'm actually really psyched because Sandler and I are almost exactly the same age, and he's a serious ball player. And as you know, I play hoops twice a week. I may have to invite you.
By the way, really, do I say count me in for that game? I'd like to be there for that game.
Okay, don't injure Adam Sandler like he is a national comedic treasure. And I will say I played hoops with you. The last time I played hoops with you, you broke your finger.
Yes.
You're a large
I'm
man.
not worried about
You're a
him. I'm
strong
worried about
man.
me.
And you throw your body around pretty physically, which I admire. Like, I'm like, screw it. If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. But I'm just saying, don't injure Adam Sandler.
There you go. That'd be one heck of a headline, right?
All right, let's get back. We actually had a story to do, but I had to call you out because you like magically edited out you're screwing up the word. And so I just had to like bring our listeners in and say, sometimes the magic of podcast is not exactly what you think. All right.
Yeah, I'm ready. Go for it. I'm ready.
Go ahead. Say what you're going to say.
No, I was going to say, so this is the part that laugh when you do radio, like I did three hours a day. My producer Diaz, who does this show as well, when that would happen, the worst part is he's just laughing at me through the glass on the other side of the wall because it's live and there's nothing he can do to fix it. And so he just laughs in my face. So now this is like my weird revenge because for how many years have we worked here, Diaz? 12, 13, 14? I don't even know how many it is. He just used to just laugh at me, and now he actually has to go back and fix it. So I'm like, the joke's on you, buddy. The joke's on you. So, yeah, when it's live, there's nothing you can do about it. So with all that specificity, the word I can't say is still denied for some reason. Let's get back to the FBI story.
You have reported on this story with alarming specificity. and let me read from the Fox News story. Quote, U.S. intelligence has credible foreign sources indicating that the FBI would play a role in spreading the salacious Trump-Russia collusion narrative before the Bureau ever launched its controversial Crossfire Hurricane probe. Sources familiar with the intel told Fox News Digital. CIA Director John Ratcliffe is expected to declassify the underlying intelligence, including a classified annex related to former special counsel John Durham's investigation into the origins of the Trump-Russia probe. A source familiar with the contents of the classified annex told Fox News Digital that while it may not have been exactly clear in the moment what the intelligence collection meant, with the benefit of hindsight, it predicted the FBI's move with alarming specificity. And it goes on to say,
bingo,
quote,
there's your quote.
There you go. Quote, ultimately, the release of the classified annex will lend more credibility to the assertion that there was a coordinated plan inside the U.S. government to help the Clinton campaign stir up controversy connecting Trump to Russia. The source, who was granted anonymity, discussed the sensitive intelligence matters that have not yet been made public, told Fox News Digital. Quote, mere days after this intelligence was collected, the FBI launched Crossfire Hurricane, the source said. Quote, it is really hard to see how Brennan, Clapper, and Comey are going to be able to explain this away.
You put that in perspective, and I think it's fair to say at this point, everything we were hearing during the back of the day on this, it was all just straight up government propaganda, and the media was 100% in on it.
Well, it was not just government propaganda. It was driven by the Hillary Clinton campaign. It was opposition research that they paid for. And then they gave to the Obama administration to launder it. They laundered it through the FBI. They laundered it through the Department of Justice. And it was the federal government attacking Donald Trump because they did not want Donald Trump to be president. And the degree to which the government was complicit in partisan politics, but not just partisan politics that was false, that was a lie. This was made up. The Russia hoax was a hoax. It was concocted through the Hillary Clinton campaign. It was laundered through the FBI and the Department of Justice. And it was a lie that was a political attack job. And I want to commend John Ratcliffe, the head of the CIA, a good friend of mine, for making this public, for drawing accountability and truth to what occurred.
What do you think is going to come from this? Because there's so many, I think, disgruntled and frustrated Americans that hear these things and are like, all right, we're now getting more and more confirmation this happened. Will there be any real accountability, and does this move us closer to that?
So I hope so, that there needs to be accountability. And I will say you have Tulsi Gabbard, who released her bombshell information about the degree of the complicity of the administration. And if you didn't hear our podcast last week on this. You should listen to the podcast on Tulsi Gabbard's bombshell information. I hope there is accountability. I call on the Department of Justice. I also had, when I was having drinks with the Army Secretary, I also had drinks with the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. And so I was urging DOJ, follow the facts and prosecute anyone who is complicit. There are challenges because some of the people who were involved in this, their criminal conduct was before the statute of limitations expired. And so it is harder to prosecute someone who committed criminal conduct after the statute of limitations has expired. Andrew McCabe, who was the deputy director of the FBI, he testified before Congress. He testified falsely, and the statute of limitations has not yet expired on his testimony. So if I were to predict the single most likely person in the Obama administration to face prosecution, it would be Andrew McCabe, because there's still a window where he lied to Congress and it's within the statute of limitations.
Really incredible. We're going to keep you updated on all this. Don't forget to hit that subscribe or auto download button. Share this podcast, and please write us a 5-star review. It helps us reach more people out there on the charts. And the Senator and I will see you back here in a couple of days. Now, if you want to hear the rest of this conversation, you can go back and listen to the full podcast from earlier this week. Now on to story number 2. Senator, I want to move to this new report that's come out, and it is something that we have been really raising the flag on, saying pay attention to this, be careful where you send your kids to college, be careful that they're going to be indoctrinated to hate America, and be careful where you send your kids, because there's a lot of money that's coming in from countries that are trying to undermine America and hate America. We're now seeing more of this at Harvard, with Harvard's ties now directly to the Chinese Communist Party elites. That has been revealed on a level we haven't seen before, and it's even more shocking of where Harvard's getting their cash. And look, China is not doing this because they like Harvard. They're clearly doing it for influence.
Unquestionably, and you know, some have criticized the Trump administration going after Harvard University. Harvard is the most influential university on the face of the planet, and it. Also, many universities in America have been in bed with the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese government spends millions of dollars trying to get influence and trying to brainwash our students, trying to control our universities. And far too many universities have been really eager to participate in that, and Harvard has been right at the front of the list. Well, this week, the House of Representatives has an investigation, and they sent a letter to the president of Harvard. This is a letter from John Molinar, who is the chairman of the Select Committee on the CCP in the House. It's from Tim Walberg, who's the chairman of the House Committee on Education and Workforce. And it's from Elise Stefanik, who's the chairwoman of House Republican Leadership. And here's what the letter says. It's addressed to the president of Harvard University, Alan Garber. And it says, Dear President Garber, the Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party and the Committee on Education and Workforce have identified new evidence related to Harvard University's connections to the Chinese Communist Party and request additional information. During our investigation, multiple whistleblowers told us that Harvard has maintained close formal relationships directly with Chinese Communist Party entities. Specifically, whistleblower information revealed ties between Harvard and the Central Organization Department of the Central Committee of the CCP, as well as certain Chinese government entities. The CCP Organization Department is one of the most powerful bodies within the Communist Party. It is responsible for the regimented training program centered on Xi Jinping thought provided to the party elites and controls the placement of CCP members in key leadership positions. The whistleblowers also revealed that Harvard cultivates ties with elite CCP members. For example, whistleblowers reveal that the Harvard Kennedy School hosts a formal partnership with the Chinese Executive Leadership Academy Pudong, which is controlled by the CCP Organization Department. Under that partnership, the rising CCP elite who are being prepared for senior Communist Party leadership positions participate in training at Harvard in the United States. Additional publicly available information indicates that some of these relationships have been in place for at least a decade. In 2016, a high-ranking member of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences stated that Chinese, quote, party and government cadres participate in education and training run by the CCP Organization Department. the Chinese government sends some cadres abroad to the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. This is shocking, and it certainly appears from this investigation, and they request all documents related to any engagement between Harvard and the CCP and the government of China, and a list of all money that has come from China and the Chinese government. And my prediction is Harvard is going to fight tooth and nail not to turn this over, because they don't want people to know that just how eager they have been to be in bed with the communists running the Chinese government.
Can we also just be very clear? Like, China doesn't do this because they like higher education, or they're just trying to get, let's say, their students in. That would be like the most G-rated version of a story that you could tell. They're doing this to buy genuine influence at the highest levels in academia in America. And also, this could have major consequences for the U.S. when it comes to national security or spies and countless other infiltration activities that they're a part of all the time.
Look, that's exactly right. You look at Harvard trains many of our nation's elite. For example, I just typed in a quick list on AI. How many senators went to Harvard? And AI promptly gave me an answer. There are currently 12 senators who are Harvard alumni. And I will admit, sadly, that it came back and says the list includes individuals like Ted Cruz, Tim Kaine, Jack Reed, Chuck Schumer, and Mitt Romney. So I'm a little embarrassed to be the first name on that list. But that is part of the reason that Harvard puts, that China puts that money into Harvard, into Columbia, into elite universities across this country, is they want to train America's leaders. They want to train members of Congress. They want to train members of the executive branch. They want to train federal judges. They want to train the foreign policy apparatus. And they are trying to train them, and they're trying to propagandize. They use this for brainwashing. They use this for espionage. And far too many of our universities have been so eager to take the money that they have welcomed Chinese communists with open arms.
When you look at where they are right now and you look at Harvard, is this just about the money, do you think? Or is this also about the fact that Harvard has no problem agreeing on a lot of issues with China?
Well, it's both. And listen, the Harvard faculty is hard left. One point I've said many times is that when I was a student at Harvard Law School, there were more professors who were communists than there were who were Republicans. And that's not hyperbole. There were at least a dozen professors who openly said they were Marxists, that they were followers of the teachings of Karl Marx and followers of Karl Marx is the father of communism. When I was a student there was only one professor who openly identified as Republican. That was Charles Fried. And by the way, Charles Fried, the lone Republican on the faculty, voted for Barack Obama. So their lone Republican voted for Obama as well. That was the range of thought 30 years ago, and it is much, much worse now. As you know, my most recent book is entitled Unwoke: How to Defeat Cultural Marxism in America. And the opening chapter talks about cultural Marxism, how it grew at Harvard University. It spread to universities throughout this country. It spread to K through 12 education, to journalism, to big business, to big tech, to entertainment. And sadly, I call the universities the Wuhan lab of the woke virus, because they're where it was created, they're where it mutated, and they're where it spread. And Harvard was ground zero for that spread.
Final question on this. Will Congress be able to really do anything on this issue to stop this type of money coming into these universities?
Look, I hope so. One of the very first pieces of legislation that I passed 13 years ago was legislation that banned Defense Department money from going to universities that have Confucius Institutes. Confucius Institutes were paid for by the Chinese Communist government. They were at universities all over the country. I got that through. I got that passed and signed into law. I actually got bipartisan support for it. And as a result, dozens of Confucius Institutes shut down all over the country. So we can make a real impact. I've got more legislation to require transparency of foreign money going to universities. We ought to know about it. And look, the Trump administration is trying hard to expose this and to stop it, and I salute the president for doing that.
As before, if you want to hear the rest of this conversation on this topic, you can go back and download the podcast from earlier this week to hear the entire thing. I want to get back to the big story, number 3 of the week you may have missed. I want to get to this other big issue, and that is Democrats are not just abandoning Israel, they are straight up anti-Israel, and they're showing it now as they're voting. A record number of Senate Democrats are voting to block weapons sales to Israel. They're doing it in numbers we've never seen before. And this on top of the fact that the New York Times has had to basically correct the claim about a viral photo of a starving Gaza boy they blamed on Israel. It actually wasn't true at all. And they didn't correct it like in the paper. They did it on X on their PR account that like no one follows. This is now how bad it's gotten, not only in the media, but also in D.C.
Well, when I arrived in the Senate 13 years ago, there was meaningful bipartisan support for Israel. It was one of the issues that you could see Republicans and Democrats come together. 2013, when I got here, was the beginning of the second term of Barack Obama, and Barack Obama began to turn the Democrat Party against Israel. That turn accelerated dramatically during the Biden administration, and Joe Biden ended up being the most anti-Israel president and the most anti-Israel administration we've ever seen. Joe Biden, in the midst of a war that Israel was in, cut off weapons, froze weapons to Israel, and did so specifically to prevent Israel from killing terrorists, Hamas terrorists, who had attacked Israel viciously in one of the most horrific terrorist attack in world history, October 7th, where Hamas murdered over 1,200 civilians, targeted civilians directly, raped and murdered women and little girls. And the Democrats, looking at the aftermath of this, more and more of them decided they stand with Hamas. And sadly, there is a real and growing pro-Hamas contingent of the Democrat Party today. This week, Bernie Sanders brought a resolution trying to block weapons sales to Israel. Now, Bernie Sanders has been rabidly anti-Israel for a long time. Most left-wing socialists and Marxists are. But Bernie Sanders' resolutions trying to cut off Israel usually failed with a big, big vote. Well, this week, the Senate rejected it again, and we rejected it by a vote of 70 to 27. But there were 27 votes in favor of Bernie Sanders' resolution. There are only 47 Democrats in the Senate. That means more than half of the Senate Democrats voted to cut off funding for Israel. That is a dramatic shift. And by the way, if you compare it to in April, we had a similar vote, and only 15 Democrats voted for it. In November of 2024, 18 Democrats voted for it. So moving up to 27 is a major shift. And it is a disturbing pattern where when faced with a choice, do we support Hamas or do we support Israel? More and more Democrats, they're afraid of the AOCs, they're afraid of the Ilhan Omars, they're afraid of the Rashida Tlaibs in the House, the pro-Hamas squad, and they're also afraid of the radical protesters on college campuses. Understand, those protesters are funded by George Soros, they're funded by the same people who fund the Democrat Party, and more elected Democrats have decided that they will not anger the pro-Hamas radicals. And so I've got to say it is sad to see. But
let me ask you a question, by the way.
Growing.
You mentioned, and let me ask you this. So, look, we know that there's more people on the House side, so you'll get some, fringe groups on the House side on the Democratic Party, even like more hardcore conservatives we've seen in the past with conservative caucuses. You can see numbers move there. The Senate's kind of been like the place of elder statesmen, and like there's certain issues that you kind of just see that like, hey, we're going to be the adults in the room. I think that's the scariest part of these votes I'm witnessing now is this has moved from the House and the radicals there that you kind of expect it through the AOC and her group, right? You expect it, but now it's moved into the Senate chamber. And that is really, I think, telling about the anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party. Am I wrong?
More than half of the Senate Democrats voted to cut off military funding for Israel. That's a milestone. That's never happened before. And by the way, it happened at the exact same time that we saw three governments worldwide, governments of U.S. allies, but that are led by leftists. The government of the United Kingdom, the government of France, and the government of Canada all came out in favor of recognizing an independent Palestinian state. And I want you to think about the message that the UK and France and Canada are saying. They're saying to Hamas, your terrorism worked. They're saying to Hamas, we're glad you murdered 1,200 innocent civilians. We're glad you raped women and little girls. By the way, they're also saying to Hamas, we're glad you continue to keep hostages to this day. You do not release the hostages. They're saying to Hamas, we're glad you're responsible for starving Palestinians in Gaza. Understand that the human suffering in Gaza is the direct result of Hamas. Hamas could end this right now. And Donald Trump, by contrast, put out a tweet this week, and he said Hamas could end the suffering right now by stopping fighting and releasing the hostages. They don't want to. And in fact, Hamas is actively negotiating. You know what they're negotiating for? Cut off food aid for Palestinians in Gaza. We, Hamas, want to control all the food because it's one of the ways we keep in power is by starving anyone who opposes us. That is who the United Kingdom and France and the Canadian government is supporting, and that is also, sadly, who now a majority of Senate Democrats are supporting.
You also look at the media, and there's a second part of this conversation. The New York Times has had to roll back a claim. They put it out there of a viral photo of a starving Gaza boy. It was propaganda. It was clearly propaganda from the terrorists and those that want you to somehow believe that Israel is starving kids. It did not happen that way at all. The New York Times was forced to correct it, and I think they did it in such a disgusting way because they issued their statement sharing how they, quote, originally didn't include this boy's pre-existing health condition, but they didn't really do it in the newspaper like on the front page the same way they did the picture. The damage has already been done. They corrected the story by going to the New York Times PR Twitter, not even the New York Times Twitter account, the New York Times PR account that virtually no one's going to see.
Yeah, look, this was not a picture that they just had as a kind of side note in a small story. This is a picture the New York Times put on the front page. It occupies more than half of the front page above the fold. It is a massive picture, and it's a horrible picture. It's a picture of a little boy. He appears to be starving. His spine is sticking out. I mean, it's a very disturbing. It's an 18-month-old child, which they said he was starving. He faced life-threatening malnutrition, and they blamed that on Israel, and they used it to push Hamas's propaganda. After they did that, the New York Times was forced to issue a correction, and they did the correction, as you noted, on Twitter where no one would see it. And their correction says that what they didn't tell people, here's what their statement was, quote, children in Gaza are malnourished and starving, as New York reporters and others have documented. We recently ran a story about Gaza's most vulnerable civilians, including Mohammed Zakira al-Matakwa, who is about 18 months old and suffers from severe malnutrition. We have since learned new information, including from the hospital that has treated him and his medical records, and have updated our story to add context about his pre-existing health problems. This additional detail gives readers greater understanding of his situation. Our reporters and photographers continue to report from Gaza, bravely, sensitively, and at personal risk, so that our readers can see firsthand the consequences of the war. That's their fairly ridiculous retraction, where they admit they're lying to you. Now, here's what they didn't tell us. That Muhammad's mother indicated that her son suffers from, quote, a muscle disorder for which he receives specialized nutrition and physical therapy. And another journalist reported that the young boy has, quote, cerebral palsy, hypoxemia, and was born with a serious genetic order. So they showed a child who's very sick, but he's not very sick from starvation. He's very sick from other medical conditions. And the New York Times happily plays the role of Hamas's propagandists. And sadly, Senate Democrats are cheering on that false propaganda. Interestingly enough, the pattern of this is exactly the same as the pattern of Hillary Clinton signing off on the false Russia story. It is take a lie, count on the corporate media to spread that lie, count on Democrat politicians to spread that lie, and count on friendly governments to spread that lie as well. And everyone involved knows they are lying, but their political agenda in this instance, they hate Israel, they want to undermine Israel, and they want to elevate Hamas. And sadly, that more and more Senate Democrats are falling into that camp.
As always, thank you for listening to Verdict with Senator Ted Cruz. Ben Ferguson with you. Don't forget to download my podcast, and you can listen to my podcast every other day you're not listening to Verdict, or each day when you listen to Verdict afterwards. I'd love to have you as a listener to, again, the Ben Ferguson podcast, and we will see you back here on Monday morning.